Back in 2018, we saw a small glimpse of a potential Devon vs Vitaly right-handed match in a small backstage practice pool, in which it looked like Vitaly was dominating Devon. Then, in 2024, we had another small hint of this match at the East vs West 13 after pools, where we saw a similar result. And just over a month ago, Devon and Vitaly just finished their world title match on the left arm. I actually made a video about this match back then, predicting that Vitaly would have a dominant 4-0 win over Devon, which was exactly what happened. So, what do all these clips and showings have in common? Well, for one, they all show Devon getting wrecked repeatedly, both in practice and in the actual match. However, if there's anything we know about Devon, it's that he never truly gives it his all in practice, having been pinned by far weaker people than himself many times before. And as in Devon's own words, my right is not my left. So, with the right-handed match coming up in about a week's time, I'll be going over my predictions of who will be walking away victorious on April 18th. Will Vitaly retire Devon from the top ranks of the super heavyweights, or will Devon have his revenge over the Siberian Giant? Starting with Vitaly, I think it's no exaggeration to say that he has the highest potential to challenge Levan for the number 1 spot in the world. We've already seen his legendary round 1 performance against him back in 2019, where it looks like the last time that Levan really had to struggle before he rose above everyone else. At the time, Vitaly was just 120 kilos, or about 264 pounds. Compared to his concurrent form, Vitaly is about 150 kilos, or 330 pounds, as I mentioned in the last video. He also holds a massive frame and size advantage against Devon, as one of the very few people with a longer forearm and bigger hand. In addition, Vitaly is also one of the most explosive poolers in the sport, being able to secure flash pins on Jerry Caderet, Hermes Gasparini, Georgy Derezhenov, Dave Chafee, Artem Morozov, and more. Along with his explosive top roll, Vitaly has also recently displayed great versatility, having shown to be able to utilize a high hook against Morozov and Jerry, as well as having a decent flop press to counter the King's move against Michael Todd. Similarly to their left-hand match, this will likely be crucial against Devon on the right as well, seeing as Devon has been shown to struggle against the flop press and likes to opt for the hook to counter flop pressers like Jerry and Gennady. Combined with Vitaly's explosive speed and powerful side pressure, Vitaly will likely go for the approach of bringing Devon close to the pad with his side pressure before transitioning into a flop press to finish him off, similarly to what he did in their left arm match. And although Vitaly himself has struggled against the flop press in the past, Devon hasn't proven himself to be capable of that on the right. So, given Vitaly's frame and size advantage as well as his tried and proven method of winning against Devon, it's not crazy to say that Vitaly has amazing chances to defeat his long-awaited nemesis on the right as well. Now with all that being said, who do I think will win this match? Well, personally, my official prediction will be 3-0 in favor of Devon Larratt. Now, you might be wondering, if Vitaly has all the tools and experience to beat Devon, then why would you predict Devon to defeat Vitaly? Well, firstly, we have to understand the difference between Devon's right and left. After Vitaly's dominant win on the left, it's not surprising that many will believe that the result will be the same on the right. But as per Devon's own words, his right is and always has been the stronger arm.
I've trained my left and my right for most of my career as equally as possible. Normally my right has been a little bit better. Now my right has had more injuries, but the biggest thing that really matters is I basically took 6 years off of my left. I did this pumpkin style training, which really pushed my right ahead.
This has been shown many times before, but most recently against Alex Krdecha. On his left, we clearly saw Devon struggle with Krdecha, while on the right, he was practically playing around the whole time. In addition, one of Devon's biggest weaknesses on his left was his lack of back pressure, which was easily exposed by Vitaly when Vitaly drove to the side and was able to bring him close to the pin pad with side pressure alone. However, Devon on his right has massively more back pressure and side pressure, whereas Vitaly hasn't quite shown the same increase on his right. If anything, Vitaly's most impressive match so far apart from Levon back in 2019 was against Hermes Gasparini, and he still ended up losing that match. Meanwhile, Devon cleanly dismantled Hermes back in East vs West 9. In addition, we also saw Devon crack Vitaly's wrist in seconds on the left, and even though it was in the King's move, if Devon could open Vitaly's wrist on his left, then he will almost certainly do the same on his right. This leaves Vitaly with the only option of flop pressing, and with Devon's vastly increased back pressure on his right, I struggle to see how Vitaly will be able to pin Devon even in a flop press. I believe that if Vitaly does try for the flop press, it will end up similar to the Hermes match, where Devon surges to the side and eventually pins Vitaly in the press. Now, the most telling match that is the biggest red flag for Vitaly was the Michael match. The best comparison to Devon that Vitaly has faced on the right arm is arguably Michael Todd, and while he did win that match 3-0, it was a lot more shaky than I thought it would be. In the first round, we see Vitaly immediately try to hit hard and fast with a top roll, but Michael instantly blocks it in the center and cracks Vitaly's wrist. Then, Vitaly transitions into the flop press, and after a long round, the refs call a questionable pin and Vitaly takes the win. For round 2, the same thing happens, except Vitaly transitions into the flop press faster and gets a more legitimate pin. Then, for the third round, Michael makes a mistake and tries to go for the press, but Vitaly flash pins him outside of the straps for a 3-0 victory. Now, although it was a convincing win, that match showcased a lot of holes in Vitaly's game that Devon will no doubt exploit in the right hand match. For one, we saw that his wrist was relatively weak compared to his side pressure, and could be cracked by Michael Todd at center table and in the King's move. This pretty much guarantees that Vitaly won't be able to keep his wrist against Devon in any top roll for top roll scenario. In addition, we also saw that his flop press was relatively clunky compared to Hermes, who was able to pin Todd in a much better technical fashion. And we also already saw Devon dismantle Hermes' flop press as well. Now of course, Vitaly will have better leverage than Hermes due to his bigger and longer forearm, but I don't think that he has the strength in a flop press to finish off Devon, who has massively more back pressure compared to Michael Todd. Given his struggle against Todd in the King's move, it's just hard to imagine Vitaly doing better against an opponent who is superior to Michael Todd in almost every way possible. Another scenario could be similar to what Devon tried to do with Alex Kurdecha, where if Vitaly's flop press is too powerful to contain, then he will try for the hook to gain height before switching to an inside press. We've seen Devon show a bit of his supination training, and this is likely in case Vitaly's flop press is actually strong enough to pin him. Now, I think that this will be a little bit of a strange scenario, as if this does happen, then we'll likely see a weird combination of Vitaly flop pressing, Devon switches to the hook, Vitaly switches back to the top roll, Devon switches back to the top roll and cracks his wrist again, Vitaly goes back to the flop press again, and this just keeps on repeating until one person gasses out or a foul happens. If this is the case, then I still believe that Devon will outlast Vitaly in an endurance match, given that his right's endurance has been showcased to be better than his left, especially his back pressure, which barely held up during the Kurdecha left arm match, but was hardly an issue during their right arm match. Now personally, this is how I see the match going round by round. In round 1, similarly to their left hand match, I think Vitaly will no doubt take the center, but this time, due to Devon's substantially more powerful back pressure, he will no longer be able to take him close to the pin pad like he did during their left arm match. Instead, he is only able to push him halfway down on his B side, where most of Devon's matches take place. Here, Devon is extremely strong and sticky, and he immediately cracks Vitaly's wrist after a few seconds of being in a quasi-King's move. When Vitaly's wrist goes back, he immediately tries for the flop press, but Devon commits an intentional foul to escape. On the restart, Vitaly tries the top roll one more time, but Devon cracks his wrist earlier, and this time goes on the offensive and surges to the side before Vitaly can properly go for the flop press. Devon then sets up the press and pins Vitaly similar to how he pinned Hermes, 1-0. For the second round, Vitaly immediately dives into the flop press and gets Devon out of his shoulder. Devon sinks into a full King's move and gets a declined humerus foul. Then, on the restart, Vitaly tries again, but this time, Devon switches into a hook to try and gain height into a press, but Vitaly hits again with his top roll and his side pressure forces Devon back into a king's move. This happens one or two more times before Devon finally gains enough height to eventually transition into the press and pins Vitaly, 2-0. For round 3, Vitaly tries one more time for the flop press, but this time he is somewhat gassed and Devon stops him in the center and starts hitting to the side immediately and eventually pins him, 3-0. So ultimately, I think the difference between Devon's right compared to his left will be too much for Vitaly to overcome. Devon himself has stated that he stopped trading his left for years on end, allowing his right to gain a massive advantage over his left with his pumpkin arm training. And we clearly see the results of that, while Vitaly has looked more impressive with his left than his right. However, regardless of the result, this is a match nearly 10 years in the making, and definitely one of the most hyped up matches over the last few years. So, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Will Devon take his revenge on the right arm? Or will Vitaly prove himself worthy of challenging Levon?